Hello, class. I am Max Link, and this is my prose presentation on My Father's Garden by David Wagner. This is his poem. I will be reading about the first three sections. It's about 15 lines, so here we go. On his way to the open hearth, where white hot steel boiled against furnace walls in wait for his lance, to pierce the fire clay and set loose demons and dragons in molten tons blazing, down to the huge satanic cauldrons. Each day he would pass the scrapyard, his kind of garden, and rusty rock ears of stoves and brake drums, in grots of sewing machines and refrigerators. He would pick flowers for us, small gears and cogwheels, with teeth like petals, with holes for anthers, long stalks of lead to be poured into toy soldiers, ball bearings as big as grapes to knock them down. He was called a melter. He tried to keep his brain from melting to those tiger-mouthed mills, where the same steel reappeared over and over to be reborn in the fire as something better, or worse, cannons or cars, needless or gitters, flagpoles, swords, or plowshares. Now, that isn't the entire thing, but let's go on to the first part. Now, the first thing is I'll be talking about the situation and setting. The setting is the father is on his way to the scrapyard where he collects the item he needs in order to fulfill the story. This is seen in the first line of the poem. On his way to the open hearth, we know it is a scrapyard because in the sixth line it specifically says scrapyard. So the on his way part allows us to know that he is on his way in the very first line, and then we also know that it's to the scrapyard because it does say later in the poem that it is the scrapyard. Now the situation. The situation is a child of the father is describing the lifestyle he lives. The poem states that the father is called a melter because he takes the scraps from the scrapyard, melts the metal, and then creates something new. The next element that I'll be going over is the symbolism. The main symbol you see is on line 9, where it reads, "He would pick flowers for us, small wheels and cogwheels." This line, using flowers to symbolize how the gears and cogwheels meant something different to this family. So for most people, you would think small gears and cogwheels, oh, it's just a piece of metal, I might be able to use it for something. But in their eyes, it was like a flower. It meant a lot more to them than what it would to the average person. Then the third and final element that I'll be talking about is the theme and tone. Now, the theme of this poem would be the saying, "One man's trash is another man's treasure." This comes from the part of the poem where it states, "Where the same steel reappeared over and over to be reborn in the fire as something better." This basically shows that he takes the steel from the junked items and gives them new life for the better. You see this a lot of times in today's world where people be like, oh yeah, so when we're throwing all this food away, sometimes that can be another man's treasure, or you throw away something you don't need and that can be another man's treasure. Now, if we look at the tone of the poem, the tone of this poem would be a combination of happy and proud. You see the happiness comes from the same thing that I used in the symbol portion with the flowers making the child happy. This kind of references the fact that the child doesn't look at what his father is doing as something he doesn't want him to do, because he himself even looks at what his father is doing as something that is beautiful, like a flower. Now, the proud part comes from the part where the child talks about the great things that their father has done with the scrap, as it reads in the first section. Boiled against furnace walls in wait for his lance to pierce the fire clay and set loose demons and dragons in the molten tons. This shows how the child is proud of the ability that their father has, and it has a little bit of symbolism with the demons and dragons. You would think that this would represent something bad, but in this case, it's representing more of something powerful and great as what it can do. Like a dragon, it's fierce, but so he takes this junk and turns it into something great and fierce, like a dragon. And this is my presentation. Thank you for watching.